Good morning. My name is Meredith Graham, and I am tasked with the challenge of bringing the stories that you will find in this report to life. And it's one that I hold with great honor and privilege, and I just want to extend my gratitude to the people who have offered their stories to live inside this document so that all of us can have a glimpse into what it's like to, specifically the parts that Rachel and I are speaking to be a young person who ages out of the foster care system. And the first person that I want to highlight today is Natasha. And Natasha is a young person who I know personally, and she is a thoughtful, fierce, loving, kind person who is kicking some major something in college right now and doing incredibly well despite where she's come from. And she describes her experiences when she ages out of care of being dropped and of having nothing once she turned 19, and the housing precarity and the trouble that followed. And I quote her now saying, "Those experiences I had in care show me exactly who I don't want to be and what I don't want for my life. And I work very strongly with the Federation of BC Youth in Care Networks to be able to make the system better for the kids." And so she has the opportunity, and as we all do, to speak into other people's lives and to carry on the journey and to come full circle. And I guess we'll rotate. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Malek, and I'm just going to share with you one of the stories. But just before I do, I just want to honor that telling these stories was a challenge and a process of discovery for these young people, as well as they started to see the connections between their own life, their personal story, and the big picture of policy, the big picture of poverty. And so the young woman who I'll speak to her name is Laura Lynn, and she's a First Nations woman from the Soto and Cree Nations. And so right now, at the point that she's at in her life, she just aged out within the last few months and had to make shifts, had to lose the primary supports, the primary home, the primary systems that she had been existing within, and had to now go out and discover this on her own. And at the same time, she's trying to go out and discover herself, discover her identity, discover her cultural roots, these things that were taken away from her when she was in care. These were her rights while she was in care, and they were ignored. And she is now, as she turns 19, forced to go and discover these things on her own without those support systems. And so just to acknowledge that there is a double burden there for these young people. They have to go out and try and struggle, in her own words, try to make a decision between, do I pay my rent or do I eat food? When other people are just out there figuring out, hey, what do I want to study in university? And so just to honor that difference there and the challenges.
The next young person that I have the opportunity to bring to light for all of us in the room and beyond is Ashley. And Ashley shares her story with us. And again, I just give my gratitude to Ashley's courage and strength and resilience that was spoken about earlier in the room. As a young person, she is a mom. And as you can see in the report card, her kid there is quite cute, big smile on his face. And she speaks and shares about her engagement after foster care, aging out, and engaging with income assistance and what that looks like, and the money that is taken away once you start to earn, and the system that struggles to support young people who are struggling to support themselves. And she says that the only reason I'd consider going back on income assistance now is to get the medical and dental coverage for my son who needs work done on his teeth. And so reading her story, I just wanted to bring to light her independence, her fierce love for her child, her ability to strive and make these changes, again, despite where she's come from. And we know as was spoken about earlier, I think mentioned by Chris, the stories of sadness that can engulf us, especially when we consider young people in and from care, what they go through day to day, the poverty that they live inside of and are most likely to continue living inside of once they age out of care and turn 19. So much has been offered. And as for myself, the call to action is, how do we as individuals and communities become instruments in young people's symphonies of resiliency? I choose to live with hope, as Chris mentioned. And so I would challenge us all here to think about, how do we make our hearts and our feet to move, to consider the systems of oppression that envelope us and engulf us, all of us, that make it difficult to rise, and yet we do, and to consider how care ought not to expire.
So now that we've had a chance to look at these stories, we can see that this is a challenge within the foster care system, but that it's not just there. We can see in Natasha's story the intersections with precarious housing. We can see the challenges of accessing support services within this. With Laura Lynn, we can see the impacts of underfunding for First Nations communities, of the history of residential schools and separation from culture, separation from community. We can see there the decision between accessing food, accessing rent. How do we get these basics of life, and which one do we choose to give up? And with Ashley, we can see the unique challenges that are faced by parents, as well as some of the gaps that are there in the income assistance, and the choices that might force someone to go into that, even if it's not the income assistance, the simple things like medical care for a son, right? So the bottom line here is that young people should not be aging out into poverty. That's just not an acceptable way for our society to treat the young people that we have taken into our care. And these young people need to have the support and resources so that they can both participate in society, contribute to society, but also feel like they belong and have a place in this society. And so just to close it off, I want to go back to that idea of remembering. And there's remembering the facts, there's remembering the dire situation here, but I just want to call on all of you to also remember the stories, to remember that these are individuals who are right there in the middle of it right now, navigating this path. And so, yeah, there we go. Thank you.